Hey there, honey bunnies. The rumor machine is spinning again, but this time it feels less like chaos and more like someone leaked a meeting outline. The latest wave of chatter suggests YangYang could return as a Havoc resonator built for true main DPS responsibility, and not just generic damage either. The talk is about a unit that can apply or weaponize Havoc Bane at an extremely high level. And if that ends up being accurate, that is not just another character drop. That is the kind of release that quietly starts rewriting the meta. Because right now, rumor season is whispering about a second 5-star possibly landing next to her in version 3.5. The name floating around is Sui, which already sounds like someone who will either break the game or break your resource savings. If the chatter is even remotely accurate, this unit could revolve around something called Glacio Chaffee, which sounds less like a mechanic and more like a status effect designed specifically to ruin your weekend plans in the lab. What makes this interesting is not just a new mechanic, it is the pattern forming around it. There are signs pointing toward multiple units leaning into negative status design instead of just raw damage scaling. If YangYang is potentially leaning into Havoc Bane interactions, while Sui potentially amplifies Glacio-based status play, that starts looking less like coincidence and more like intentional ecosystem design. And when developers build ecosystems, they are basically telling players to stop thinking about single unit power and start thinking about team chemistry. It's like the difference between having one strong gym member versus building an entire squad that knows how to combo ultimates like it is synchronized swimming. Now add another rumor layer. There's talk that Hiyuki might function as a Glacio Chaffee-focused damage dealer. If that turns out to be real, then suddenly this is not one mechanic, this is a potential status-based economy where one unit enables, one unit amplifies, and one unit cashes out the damage. That is usually where things get dangerous for the meta. Status-based teams historically scale like crazy once players start optimizing rotations, gear rolls, and buff windows. It starts slow, then 6 months later, everyone is asking how these comps are suddenly deleting bosses. And this is where a certain quiet support unit starts looking less optional and more like infrastructure. Chisa has already built a reputation for making status interaction teams feel stable instead of fragile. She does not scream for attention, she just quietly makes runs smoother while everyone else gets credit. If version 3.5 really pushes negative status synergy forward, Chisa stops being just a comfort pick. She starts looking like the kind of unit that makes experimental team ideas actually survive real combat instead of just looking pretty in spreadsheets. And historically, whenever a new design direction shows up, the game has a funny habit of rerunning the units that make that direction work, almost like the banner schedule exists specifically to remind you of your past mistakes. If a Chisa rerun happens anywhere near this patch window, it would make complete sense. New status-focused units arrive, players start experimenting, then suddenly everyone remembers the healer buffer who already solves half the problems those teams have. Looking at YangYang from a design standpoint also supports this direction. If she really is an awakened 5-star variant, it probably won't just be number inflation. It will likely be evolution through mechanics. More field presence, stacking systems, or burst windows that reward status setup and timing. That aligns perfectly with how recent kits have been trending. Less solo carry energy and more synergy-driven scaling. And historically, synergy-based units age better in long-term metas. From a marketing and story angle, awakening early characters is basically guaranteed hype. You get nostalgia, story relevance, and built-in emotional investment in one banner. It's basically the gacha version of a high-budget sequel. If version 3.5 really launches with an awakened YangYang, a Glacio-tied unit, and a support that stabilizes status teams, this patch could quietly reshape team building for months. Instead of chasing raw damage ceilings, we might see more teams built around debuffs, status stacking, and timed burst windows. That usually means gameplay feels more active and less like spreadsheet homework. Leaks are still chaos. Things change, kits get rebuilt, mechanics vanish overnight. But when multiple sources point toward the same design direction, it's usually not random. If you like building weird comps before they become meta, this is probably a patch to watch. If even half of this is real, we might not just be getting new characters, we might be seeing the start of the next meta cycle. And honestly, nothing feels better than watching a meta shift happen while acting like you called it months ago. For now, stay flexible with resources, watch recent kit trends, and don't be surprised if YangYang comes back not just stronger, but specifically built to make certain enemies regret spawning. Thanks for watching.